What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Just a quick little intro here before we get started into this episode of Chew on This with the lovely Sabrina Ramirez. Just a heads up, if you guys didn't watch the last episode, if you're new to the channel, welcome. I have to mention this because on the last episode we talked about how I recorded all these episodes in early February, and just due to some scheduling things, they all kind of came out of order by the end of it all. And it's taught me not to backlog things and to just be diligent with my work and really get on top of it, so everything can come out in a timely fashion. There's no weird continuity things that I gotta explain, but sadly here we are with the weird continuity thing I gotta explain. Yeah, so since we recorded this early February and we recorded some of the later or the episodes that I've already released that following week after, you'll notice that we make references to things like, oh, this is the first time I'm talking about this on this show or on a future episode or on the last episode, things of that nature. Just a little heads up. Please don't let it detract from this amazing conversation I had with Sabrina Ramirez. She is a delight. Every guest we've had on, it's been an absolute treat to get to know them. So I hope you guys enjoy the show. Thanks for sticking with me on this journey as we're learning the ins and outs of podcasting, but I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have an audio version of this out in the next 2 weeks. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoy this episode of Chew on This. Thanks. What is up, everybody? Michael here, bringing another video today. I'm super duper excited. It's going to be another episode of Chew on This, and I have the wonderful, amazingly talented Sabrina Ramirez here today. How's it going, Sabrina? What is up?
Oh, it is going great. Lots of great movies to catch up on for 2020. Lots of great directors to kind of highlight on First Cut. So it's just been, it's been a week full of movies for me. So, I'm having a blast.
Good, dude. Yeah, same here. I've just been trying to catch up on all the 2020 stuff as well. Prepping for Valentine's Day with some romantic watches I have in store for another episode of this coming up. But today's all about you, dude. I gotta ask, this is always the first question I love to ask, is what was the last movie that you saw before coming on the show today?
The last movie I saw, I did not get a chance to finish it yet, but I did start Minari. And
Awesome.
oh my gosh, I already know this just from what I've seen. I only have about like 20 minutes left on it. I don't typically like to stop films, but of course, had to give my time to you.
I
And
appreciate
I'm
it, my
more than
friend.
happy to do it. I know I paused Minari for you guys.
Which says a lot. It's a fantastic movie.
Exactly. So that's the last one that I've checked out. I'm just absolutely blown away. From all of the performances, the dialogue, the cinematography, the direction, just it's hitting every single mark in my book. And yeah, everybody has to check that one out.
Yeah, I definitely recommend that one too. I haven't really talked about on this show a whole lot yet because I'm kind of waiting for more people to be able to see it, but it's definitely one that everyone should see and needs to see when it comes out. I just watched Beginners, which is a 2011 movie, I want to say, which I haven't seen before. I think it's right up your alley, actually, if you haven't checked it out. It's with Ewan McGregor and Christopher Plummer are the two leads in it. And Christopher Plummer plays a recently out grandfather or father to Ewan McGregor. He's like 75 in his last couple months of his life, and he comes out of the closet to his son. And it's basically showing the timeline of events prior to some health issues happening and after that with Ewan McGregor. And it's a really, really fun, charming indie movie that I had yet to see. So I definitely recommend catching that one as well if you haven't checked it out.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That one's actually been on my list for a hot minute. There's
Yeah.
just so much to check out all the time. But with with everything you're saying about it, I'm gonna have to move that one up.
Yeah, it's really, really strong. It's so charming and fun. And it snuck up on me too. It got me in my feels a little bit before I hopped on here. So I definitely recommend checking it out. Yeah. When we talk about film, you are someone that probably out of the 10 or 15 people in this space, I would say are the most knowledgeable and someone I would trust their opinions of. And you were and first of all, you're welcome, but you were very new to this space. So I kind of want to know, where did that love for film develop? Because you seem to know so much at an age relatively close to mine as well. So
yeah, I just, my first memory with film in general was just going to the movies with my dad, going to Blockbuster with my dad, checking out all these different films. I would just pick out random stuff. I was so young that I would just see a cover and I'm like, all right, this is my choice. He would have his choice. And then my sister sometimes had hers, but she was really little. So most of the time, my choice kind of was the one that we
superseded that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just kind of like my start with it. So the way I thought about film was that experience with my family. And then obviously as I got older with my friends going to the movies all the time. That's one of your first places of freedom when you're a kid. It's like, Mom, drive me to the movies, please. I'm going to go hang out and have fun. And that's how I kind of just discovered my love for it, because every time I thought about film, I thought about all of these positive memories in my life. And then afterwards, as I just started to get into all different like mediums of art, into like writing,
Mhm.
into all of that, I just think film is this beautiful encapsulation of everything that we love. When it comes to the score, we have music there. There's all these different like things that have to work harmoniously to make something work.
Yeah.
And so that's just why I feel like film is one of my favorite things of all time. It's the thing I dedicate obviously my life to, my career to so far. And so just when I think about it, it's like I don't even, it's not like synonymous with like work for me. It's
Absolutely.
I'm enjoying this 100%. I haven't lost my passion or my love so far. And that was something that I was worried about going into this type of like environment with my job.
Mhm.
But it's been a journey, because still to this day, like when I think about it, I just think about Blockbuster and just checking out all these different movies. I remember watching like Brokeback Mountain when I was too young.
Wow. I was gonna say,
Yeah,
how old were you back in the Blockbusters days watching that film?
exactly. I remember my dad picked it up because he had no idea what it was about. And I was just blown away. And I was definitely too young to even like
Mhm.
actually take all of it in at the time.
Yeah.
But it's just stuff like that. Like I have specific films that just stick out like no other.
Yeah, it's funny too. I mean, I can vividly remember the days of we had a Blockbuster down the street from here, and I didn't start checking it out till it was far too late when they were in their last couple of years of life. And just
No.
walking, I know it's such a bummer, but just walking in there and just picking movies by the cover is an
Yep.
experience that is unlike any other. And I wish more people would get to experience that now. I think it opens our eyes to so many different kinds of movies that, which I'm going to touch on as well, that we haven't, necessarily seen on giant billboards and whatnot. And that's kind of what I wanted to ask you about, because I would consider you probably the queen of independent film, covering independent film, the knowledge about independent film. Where did those indie sensibilities come from? Did they come from that time in the Blockbuster, or was that something that developed shortly after?
I feel like it definitely started in Blockbuster because I saw stuff like Juno. I had no idea what this was. This was like pre-internet days. I didn't have a
Mm,
computer until I was much older. So I would just see a cover and I'm like, all right, cool, let's pick that out. So that's how I started with all of that. But then another funny thing is actually Tumblr. I had a
okay.
Tumblr probably
Mm,
at the age of like 12 or 13. Again, the internet is a crazy place. Way too young to be just like scrolling through
just yeah,
Tumblr like that.
honestly.
But I mean, it builds character. So it introduced me to like, I already had a cool taste in movies, cool taste in music. Like it was nice and like diverse. I
Mm,
sought out stuff myself before Tumblr, but it introduced me to a lot of things, like my favorite movie of all time. I actually just saw a few stills on Tumblr of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind,
yeah.
and I was like, holy crap, what is this? I need to watch it right now. And so I really do owe a lot of that to like strangers on the internet posting different quotes and stuff that was just hitting me on Tumblr. So when I actually got to see it brought to life on screen in a film, it was a
Mm.
whole different experience. So yeah, I would say Tumblr is the answer.
Wow, that's funny, because we were just about to get into your favorite film of all time, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. So is that where that dawned from? Is actually from a couple Tumblr posts, just scrolling through and seeing some cool screenshots?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I had to be like 13 or 14, and I just
Mm,
stumbled upon one of the stills from when they're on the beach in bed, and I
mm,
was like, I don't know what's happening here, but this is freaking beautiful and I want to hang it
yeah,
on my wall. So I need to check out whatever this is. And obviously we know Jim Carrey, we know Kate Winslet, and this is like in a way that I had never seen them before. I was like
yeah,
13 at the time that I checked this out. Again, didn't fully understand or have a grasp on anything, and probably still don't. And that's a beautiful thing about art in general, is
yeah.
that as it like ages with you in this beautiful way and you get so much more out of stuff, even if you checked it out for the first time when you were a kid, you're going to see it in a completely different way now.
Yeah, and and when you saying that, I mean, I just rewatched this movie last night in preparation to talk about it with you today, and it's the exact thing where I've seen this movie at least 3 or 4 times in my life at various stages of my life. This is the obviously the most recent, but I haven't seen it probably in about 2 or 3 years prior to this, and even watching it now, my experience with it is completely different than it was 3 or 4
Yeah.
years ago. I mean, man, as I a wreck watching it this time, because every other time it's kind of, I've seen it as more of a surrealist comedy, really. Whereas this time, I mean, just the
Wow.
heartache. Yeah, I mean, really, the heartache of the situation just is horrifying. And as you get older, I mean, the ideas presented in that film and many films become more ingrained in your head. So I kind
Yeah.
of want to ask you that film's relationship in your life. What do you, even though you didn't get a full grasp of it the first time you saw it, what do you remember, any feelings that you may have had walking away from it?
Yeah, I was already always like interested in different types of stories from stuff that I haven't experienced. So
Mhm.
obviously at that age, I hadn't experienced like a relationship or anything of that sort.
Yeah.
But it's even just what I took from it at the time was just the idea of altering a moment, a memory, a person in your life, and how it changes all these different aspects. So at the time, we all grow up, and still it's going to continue happening for the rest of our lives. We all have that thing where it's like, I just wish this night didn't happen, or I never met this person. It doesn't even have to be somebody you're in a relationship with,
Yeah.
but it shows that every single thing that happens to us changes the position we're going to be in life, the path we're going to go down, and you learn so much. And the reason why we are the people that we are the experiences that we've had, are the people that we meet. So that's what I got out of it the first time. And like, of course, I was enveloped in this relationship between Joel and Clementine, but I hadn't experienced one. So then, of course, as I got older, and as I finally had like my first heartbreak a few
Yeah.
years ago, college, we love to see it. And it was just one of those things where it became my comfort. It always was.
Mm.
But I'm one of those people that like to feel pain. I know it's the weirdest thing,
Same.
but in like exactly
Yeah.
in the art that I consume, like the music that I listen to, I love to hear a story. I love to be so engrossed by something where I'm feeling everything that that person's feeling.
Mm.
It's something that I love. So that's why this film was always comfort. But after I actually experienced a little bit more in life, moving out across the country, kind of creating my own path, besides like what I grew up with, it just hits harder every single time. And I think I've seen it, I would say probably like, I'm so embarrassed to say, like 70 times.
No, dude, say it, because I was gonna say the movies on my wall right here. I've seen probably like a total over like 100 or 150 times. Probably it's sickening, but we love it. It can't be helped when the films are that good. Really.
Exactly.
So I kind of wanted to ask you about your writing process, because this isn't something that you've gone super in depth about on social media or in your or on First Cut or anything of that nature. Would you say that that film is a big inspiration to your writing, or what are a couple films that you can point to that have been very big inspirations to your craft?
Ooh, I would say Eternal Sunshine is one of those things, and everybody has them. I know you do. I know everybody listening has these things where you listen to a song or you watch a movie and you're like, I will never create something that good,
Oh,
but I'm going
absolutely.
to try. I'm
Yeah.
going to try for the rest of my life. And so that film is that. I would never say it's it's really hard. My writing process does I take a lot of my life into it.
Mhm.
And so a lot of the things that I work on, it's just the things that I experience. Writing was my like lifeline when I was younger. That was like the way I knew how to express myself. I had issues, and I still do to this day, like being vulnerable, talking about certain things. It's just so much easier to make it like pen to paper, make it something palpable,
Yeah.
and you're releasing it, even if you don't have to scream it out and shout it to everybody that you know. And then it kind of makes you more comfortable with like being aware of yourself, why you're feeling a certain way, and how it can be a beautiful thing. And some of the films that kind of, oh, this is definitely a doozy. I like a lot of Spike Jonze's work. Like Her
Mm.
was another one where
Yeah.
you, with some of those monologues, when he's just speaking about things and he's like, I feel like I felt everything I'm already gonna feel. Everything's just gonna be lesser versions.
Yeah.
I just absolutely love things like that, and also just like really authentic, organic stream of consciousness type of dialogue as well. So stuff that we see in like mumblecore or like Noah Baumbach, people like
Mm.
that. That's stuff that I've always kind of like attached myself to. And like as I work on a script, which is something that I'm going for, life and time
Yes,
and
we
things
are.
like that.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That's kind of something along the lines of where a place that I would want to start. And then because all of that, and even something like Her, I would put in the same level as like Eternal Sunshine, where they took this real life type of thing, and they grounded this like science fiction element into
Yeah.
reality. And so that's just another level of something that I hope to achieve one day, not in the same way or anything like that,
Mhm.
but just taking a normal, relatable life, human condition story and just making it so rich and layered. Like that's my number one goal, because I love stuff like Marriage Story or,
Yeah.
earlier Baumbach films, Francis Ha. But just that step above it as well, something that just adds more to the story, is something that I want to achieve.
Yeah. Wow. So I was gonna ask. I mean, now this question kind of seems pointless, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm assuming then you much prefer writing, like creatively over what you do. I mean, I don't want to say over anything, liking one thing over the other, but in terms of what you feel more comfortable with, perhaps it's definitely writing over critiquing film and analyzing film at the moment.
Yeah, I think writing, the way I looked at it is that it's for me.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to a point where I am starting to be comfortable sharing that, and I am going like out of the box. I mean, I'm only 23. So I'm stepping out of my comfort zone, and I'm hoping to be able to kind of share more of that. It is a lot easier for me to share my writing when it comes to critiquing a film, because this
Mm.
isn't something super personal. I can like draw personal ideas and talk about it. Like when I reviewed Invisible Man, we talk about like, obviously she experiences like abuse in her relationship, and I talked about that effect. So no, have I had an ex-boyfriend that has or ex-husband or whatever
Yeah.
that built a suit, and I didn't experience anything on the same level. But you can draw things that you've experienced in your own life
Mm.
and kind of put it out that way, but it doesn't take it as like, oh hi, I've experienced these things, versus if someone like reads my poetry where it's like, this is my head, you are
Yeah.
looking into my
Absolutely.
brain. So I love both, I really do, because
Mhm.
talking about film in general is just one of my favorite things to do. I never thought I could even build a career off of it. It just wasn't something that literally was in my brain. It's not
Yeah.
that I thought about it and I was like, oh, I can't achieve this. I just didn't think that would ever be possible. And so to be in the situation I am right now, I love having both of these elements where I'm like, yes, I write and I write for myself and I hope to share it with some people someday. But also I write about things that people enjoy and they like to read it, and that makes me happy as well.
Yeah, and I have to say that's actually how I first encountered your work, is actually through your written reviews prior to seeing you on First Cut and doing reviews on the mic and in front of the camera. And I kind of want to ask you about how that transition not only just occurred, but how that felt, kind of pushing yourself in front of the camera, because it is a challenge. I mean, it's even a challenge to do. We know each other, and doing a show like this is still tough over online, So
Yeah. It's interesting because I wrote reviews for myself when I was younger. I would write
mhm.
reviews for films all the time on my Tumblr. It does not exist anymore. I kind of wish it did, because I would have loved to reflect on it, but I got
That
to a
would be
point in my
dope.
life.
Yeah.
I know. So it is sad, but at that time I was just like, all right, getting rid of Tumblr. I'm becoming an adult now.
Mm.
So I did have all of that. So that's something that I did for fun for myself, for anybody that wanted to read it on Tumblr, but it wasn't like a First Cut or a Geeks of Color or any situation like that.
Mm.
Um, so it's just interesting because I got brought on to do First Cut and we started out with video stuff. And yeah, that's not anything I would ever envision for myself
Mhm.
at all. I remember they just kind of, I thought I was helping them out behind the scenes. And then they're like, all right, yeah, like get on camera. Like, yeah, you could do it,
Mhm.
whatever. Cause it's second nature to RB3 and
Yeah,
Andres. They've been
absolutely.
doing it for so long.
And
So
it
they're like,
shows, yeah.
yeah. And they're like, you could do it, whatever, just sit down. And I'm like, guys, I've never even thought about doing anything like this in my life. So that transition, it's so much easier to, kind of collect your thoughts, sit in front of a screen, and also kind of have that like anonymity. Even if you see my
Absolutely.
name and you see my picture, I'm not sitting here talking about it face to face, like what we're doing right now. It's
Mhm.
something, if we did something like this over text or over the phone, you get a completely different outcome. So
Mhm.
I love having both of those different ways of expressing my love through film, because a lot of the times when I do a written review, I don't do a video review. And a lot of the times it just ends up that way, just in terms of scheduling.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. Invisible Man is actually one of those that I did do both, and you can see it's two like different reviews worded completely differently. So I just like having that like different outcome each time.
Yeah. And that's something that actually, because I started with doing video, that I have struggled to do with now, is actually put the words on a paper and not in a free flowing thought kind of manner. So I commend
Yeah.
you guys, all three of you guys, for really being able to do it in both mediums so well. How has that experience been like, partnering up with those two gents? Because they seem like absolutely lovely people in this space, and they seem probably like two of the most comfortable people that you could probably be around to be thrust into the limelight with. How's that experience been, getting to know them better on in that level?
Yeah, it's been, I couldn't ask for two better people to work with all the time. Like we have a text chain that's constantly blowing up. We used to see each other multiple times a week. I used to spend time with them outside of even just like filming and everything like that. Because of course, you can have work relationships with people, but the difference is between them, they're genuinely two of my favorite people of all time, two of my best friends. And it started out because I was friends with RB3. So him and I were already super comfortable with each other. He knew I did like marketing. He knew I worked for like brands before, and he wanted me to help him out with like First Cut. And I was just like, hell yeah, like let's go for it. And meeting Andres was actually, I think they filmed their Soderbergh episode. And that's when I'm like, okay, I'm going to chill over here while you guys film. I just want to get a feel of what you guys are doing and just like whatever. Cause I hadn't
Yeah.
experienced podcasting or just anything like that in general. And then as I was sitting down, I think RB3 was trying to pull a movie. I think it was like The Vow with Channing Tatum or whatever. He was trying to pull it and I was in the side and I was like, The Vow. And then Andres
Yeah.
is like, come on, like, just like sit down, do your thing. And
Mhm.
meeting Andres, RB3 was working on all the camera stuff. And immediately I'm just like having my conversation with him for the first time. And he's like, oh, what do you do? What do you like to do? What are your favorite movies? What's your family like? What's your life like? And he's the easiest person to talk to in the world. Like I swear.
That's awesome.
And it's just in a like 15-minute conversation, I feel like he knew so much about me and I knew so much about him. And it just kind of blossomed from that point. And they're genuinely family to me.
Yeah, wow. The affinity really does show. I mean, it shows in not only that you guys are putting out so much work, but in the work that you guys are putting out, it looks like you guys are having an absolute blast doing it together. So it's good to
Love
hear that
them.
it isn't just for the camera.
No, not at all. I spent Thanksgiving with Andres a
Mm,
month after I knew him. So
wow.
he knew I was in Los Angeles. It was just one of those things, and that's how it always is. And I'm just beyond grateful to have
Yeah,
them.
wow, that's awesome. Would you say that them to their support kind of pushed you, and their confidence in you kind of pushed you into trying to do your own solo stuff in this space, or was that something that you kind of cultivated and wanted to do on your own without a push, and you just were ready for it?
Yeah, I wouldn't have even done any of this at all without them. They're the ones that kind of motivated me there. I had done like 2 episodes of The Meaning of, I had done maybe one review by then, and them two, and also Dorian Parks of Geeks of Color.
Mm,
He called me one day. I'm brand new to all of this. He called me and he's like, "Oh, do you want to host a red carpet like interview stuff like that for the Doctor Sleep premiere?" And I was like, "What? Like, why are you? You know what I mean?"
yeah,
I'm just mind blown as like, how do all these people have this much confidence in me? I've never done this before. Not to be like, we're all our own worst critics.
of
And
course,
not that
yeah.
I was like down on myself, but I didn't think I was at the level that I could do something like that. I feel like I would have to be like a seasoned host or whatever.
Hmm.
And yeah, so having all of them just trust me with all of those different things, it did totally get me so comfortable, so motivated. And yeah, I started my own stuff, and it's been really cool because again, I had the crutch of having them there and it made me comfortable, and this put me out of my comfort zone a little bit, which is stuff that I've wanted to do for so long.
Yeah.
I want to push myself out of my comfort zone. I don't want to stick in one place. So just it's really cool to see the progression of things. But yeah, I owe a lot to just like their confidence in me.
Yeah, wow. And in forming your own Patreon, I mean, you've given me personally the opportunity through your Discord to meet so many other cool people. Raul, who's on a previous episode of this show, he's phenomenal, and many others have been the kindest individuals I've met. How did you feel prior to creating your Patreon? What were your biggest like trepidations going into that?
One, I was like, okay, so I have to manage everything myself, just scheduling and things like that. It's
Hmm.
all on me because it's only me basically,
Yeah.
most of the time. So there was that where I was like, okay, so I have to like push myself to be like, okay, you're gonna do this, this, and this. You're gonna take on more work, and just figure it out in your schedule the way it has to be. So there was that, and then the main thing, honestly, was who cares? You know, like I was
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
like who I genuinely had absolutely no idea. I thought I was going to start this and there was going to be like 5 people, and I was going to be so freaking happy to have 5 people that
Hmm.
wanted to listen to what I had to say or wanted to interact with me in that way. And then it just like kept building. And yeah, I met so many great people. You, like everybody that's in the Discord, like I know stuff about everybody's life. We've just built this kind of relationship
Yeah.
online through our love of film and just sharing different recommendations, that I'm so blown away, because before I started the Patreon, I would have never thought it'd be something at this level of just like
Hmm.
the relationship I have with all of you guys. It's like my biggest thing was who cares what I have to say? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so to know
Yeah.
that there are people that do care, it just like really warms my heart, and I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, and it worked out beautifully too that you decided to start all this up when everyone was just by themselves in the worst possible state that they could have been in, all isolated, and you were just able to form this great community from nothing basically, which is
Yeah.
amazing. And it's something that you should pat yourself on the back for. It's really impressive. I wanted to talk about, speaking of last year, a stream that I thought, and that honestly was what the one of the biggest takeaways as to why I wanted to have you on the show is your mental health stream last year, your first one. I will say this for me personally. I mean, there are very few people, not just in this space, but in general. And it's a very hard thing to do. So we commend everyone that does this to openly talk about mental health problems and how they've affected you and your work and your life, every facet of life, really. What I want to know, first of all, what were your thoughts in creating that? What were you scared to do that? Was that something that you always had intended on doing when you first started doing your own streams on your Patreon?
Yeah, so kind of like you said earlier, this all happened at a time where people were alone and people didn't have the same kind of outlets, and myself included. I'm so open about the fact that I am a very outgoing person. I love to go out. I love to go hang out with my friends, and that was something I did so often. Like most nights out of the week or most days, I was doing something with somebody and I was
Yeah.
talking to somebody in person. And I haven't had that, and I still haven't had that. I know people do like social distance, whatever, but like basically I have been like kind of alone this entire time. So at that time, something that I noticed in the Discord was that, which is a beautiful thing that we have, is that we have a lot of people who are there for each other all the time.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew at that time that this is a place where you can be comfortable, you can be open. I will do the same, and I want to hear how you feel, and I want to make sure that you know that there's so many people that care about you. And so I wasn't scared at all, because even though I did talk about how I hate being vulnerable, um certain things, and I feel like my struggles and kind of what I felt in my life, if I can share that with somebody else, if I can be there for somebody else and that helps them, then that makes me feel so happy. Like that genuinely, not to say like it makes it like worth it, but it takes something that I've hated or I've disliked my entire life. It's like, why
Yeah.
why do I have to go through something like this? But it takes something like that and makes it worth it and makes it beautiful, and just having that community to share it all. So when I did it, and yeah, the response afterwards, the messages I was getting,
Mm.
and it blew me away. And that's why I'm just so happy to be able to have a platform where so many people can come together and talk about that stuff as well. It's not something, it's like on the surface of, okay, here are my reviews about movies, but you're never ever going to know anything about me. I'm more
Yeah.
than happy to share a lot about myself. And
Mhm.
because from being somebody who never shared anything about themselves, never talked to people in their lives, when they were younger, having that transition to being more open and comfortable to talk about it, I hope I can have everybody have that same experience.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, at least from the streams that I've seen of yours, I believe you did multiple mental health streams, correct?
Yeah, I've done 2 so far.
Yeah. So even doing through, like I said, watching the first one, I mean, that had a profound effect on me. It's honestly, and I think I've told this to you before. This is one of the reasons I actually was able to get back into doing this. And we talked off air multiple times as well about motivation, how hard it is to really get motivated when we're still stuck here, we're still stuck inside. And and like you, I mean, you have a bigger platform than I do, and I feel the same way, where it's like, is anyone even listening to the hours of work I'm putting into this? It's tough, it's really tough. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for doing that again. um Yeah, it's an absolute honor to have you on this show. And everyone that is watching this is happy to get to know Sabrina Ramirez. So I want to assure you that it was a absolutely
Thank
amazing
you.
decision that you made to go ahead and do that. Yeah, absolutely. In kind of revealing a little bit about yourself, though, do you find it difficult as to where, due to the film space, especially the film community on Twitter and on social media and whatnot, where do you feel as it's hard to draw that line as to how much should I tell about myself and where do I need to keep my private matters to myself?
Yeah, I think I don't like to get into a lot of details. I will like
Mm,
touch upon certain things, but I don't want to get into details. I don't want people social media is this like place where you're able to find all this information. Somebody can like research if I talk about a specific situation, they could just like, you know, do a little detective work and find out who it
yeah,
is, why, all these different things and I don't
yeah,
want that cuz like the reason why I'm talking about something is that I'm past it, I feel a certain way now and whatever. And so it's just like I want to share enough of myself to make sure that everybody knows that this is a welcoming, like open place. I talk about certain things on Twitter. When the pandemic first started and when quarantine first started, I was saying that like I just I just feel awful. The first probably like 4 months of quarantine were really really tough and
yeah.
I never had a like break. Like I know some people had a time where all they did was like sit inside and like watch movies and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I was continuing on with working and it was kind of tough to put on like this like energetic like I didn't want to be a downer and I didn't want to kind of affect the way I was talking about things that I did love even though
Of
I
course.
wasn't in the best like place. So I feel like it's like a way of like understanding. So yeah, it's there's a line but I feel like so far there's been a really great point of like people respecting like personal stuff,
Mhm.
but me still being able to share and having like an outlet to like express myself.
Yeah, yeah. And it's tough, man. It's so tough because I think I told you about this before too. I mean, even with the tiny following that I have, people are still willing to go out of their way to do that little bit of detective work and give you the worst of times over opinions about comic book movies or Star Wars or whatever it may be. And it's kind of makes it scary and it's kind of makes it daunting, you know.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that's like as a female in this space. Would you say that obviously I would say that you're probably a role model to a lot of female individuals out there that want to slowly enter this space, and I want to kind of give you the opportunity to talk about not only just encouraging those voices to come out and let their thoughts be shared, but how do you feel that this toxicity and this kind of negativity has kind of arose? When do you think that started to happen, and how do you feel like that's impacted female voices in this space?
I feel like as long as this whole film commentary, film criticism, when we look at art in general,
Mm,
I feel like a lot of it is like gatekept by men. No offense, but it's just in history when we're talking about the best film critics, you list off a lot of men before you recognize women. I just feel like women hadn't had the same opportunities. And we look at YouTube in general, just over the last 10 years, a lot of the shows we would watch when we were younger, things like that had no women, or if they did
yeah.
have women, the women were the hosts and the women had no input. They would just say certain things. They'd be like,
Yep.
oh, this news broke. And then all the men would talk about it. And
Mhm.
you cannot have a solid discussion about anything if you don't have a wide range of people talking about it.
Yeah.
You will not get everybody's opinion. Nobody has lived the same exact life. And so having all these different people, whether it's black women, black men, anybody in the LGBTQ community, anybody along those lines, you have to work hard to be able to incorporate all these different voices to be able to have a solid discussion and share all these different experiences with whatever it is that you're talking about. Even if it's something as simple as movie news,
Yeah.
it hits us all differently. We have a different relationship with whatever we're talking about. So we've seen obviously over the last few years that's definitely changed. There's still so much room for improvement and there hopefully
Absolutely.
will continue to be. But it's just cool because yeah, the shows I watched, absolutely no women. It's great to see so many of like the freaking intelligent strong women that I work with and that I see all the time and that I talk to, even something like First Cut, um like Andres, RB3, me. completely different people. This isn't just a table of three white men. No offense to the white men out there, but like we've heard you guys all talk about it. Like, let's get some more people in the room. Let's get some more people in the discussion. And so now working on the aspect of women, if you want to do this, go for it. 100%. Whatever it is that you want to do, if you feel like there may not be a place for me, I want to assure you that there will be, because your voice is
Absolutely.
valid and your voice and opinion needs to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny too. I feel like that as there are more and more successful female directors and the rise of that kind of the art form, diversifying, the toxicity from the other side is just coming in so much hotter as we see better works from female. I mean, last year was phenomenal. I mean, a movie that I thought was profound as time went on and I thought about was Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. And it's like
Yeah.
that story can't be told from a male perspective. It just can't. The
Nope.
subtleties involved in it and the acting, everything about it, it just would not be the same if a man had his hands on it. And that's just kind of the bottom line of it. It's strange to see that. That's kind of the negative reaction coming from females telling very personal stories. Is so strange to me.
And the thing is, like, it's like not even surprising, which is so disappointing.
Exactly.
Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always was one of those films that I actually talked about on First Cut when we talked about our top 5 directors of 2020. I said that if I could sit down and show everybody one film, show them something from a perspective that they have no idea, whether you're pro-choice, whether you're pro-life,
I
it
agree.
doesn't even
Yeah.
matter. Sit down and check out the story, because if you are a man, you will never be in this position. You will never be in this situation the
Yeah.
way our main character is. And you could put yourself in a place that you've never experienced. And it's important to have those kind of stories told, because when we see, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about it, about certain films, whether it's films about women. Look at something like Bombshell. Bombshell is like exploiting its subjects of a woman, honestly, or a man who is very aware of kind of something like this should have been at the helm of that. And then maybe you would get some authenticity in it.
Yeah.
Even any kind of like LGBTQ films, I I think people need to be behind the camera, in front of the camera, that are representing the story that you're telling. It becomes so disingenuous and
Yeah.
like inauthentic when we're seeing something told by somebody else, and we get that whole male gaze in this, like, when we have a whole film about a lesbian relationship, I don't want to see the male gaze, like,
Yeah.
that it ruins
Yeah.
the entire
Defeats the purpose.
experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's funny too. I mean, even reading reviews about that film specifically, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, it's very interesting to see people's criticisms of the film generally lie in things that are just the nature of the reality of being a female, and
Yeah.
males kind of complaining that this is an unrealistic bad part of the movie, but it's because this is real life. We're not seeing this element of real life. And even for me, seeing a movie like that, I've never seen predation handled in that way, where it's to a point where many would probably say that something like that isn't eyebrow raising, and that's a concerning thing. And that's why I think
Yeah.
movies like this should be seen. So thank you for touching on that. And I want to touch on how men can be better allies to women in this space, because I haven't asked a woman that yet, and I think that's something that we should all be asking.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is just making everybody feel welcomed,
Yeah.
making women that come in feel welcomed, making sure it's a great environment when it's not like, oh, you're being talked over or something like that. Men, because we get on the like subject of like the toxicity and everything, a lot of the men that we deal with, like in the film commentary space, obviously outside of the people I work with, because the people I work with are people I enjoy.
Yeah.
But we see it all in different times where they'll just talk over everybody around them, or they have these types of responses to films or to stories or things like that. And it's like, why do we have to have a female director on this list if they should have just directed a better film?
Yeah.
If we wanted to
That's
have a female on this list,
mhm.
it's like, but it's such an easier path for these people, and they don't recognize that, and they're not self-aware. So I think being an ally, you just have to make sure everybody's welcomed and comfortable, and you're at a place where you want to listen to whoever's talking, whether
Yeah.
it's your friend or whether it's a brand new woman that just came in. listen to their perspective about something and take it into consideration. And also, if we're talking about the toxicity in film criticism,
Please.
don't invalidate anybody else's experiences, anybody else's thoughts.
Yeah.
Just let everybody experience whatever they want to the way they are going to, and everybody have their own opinion. That's the beauty of all of this, is that we're able to talk about it. And something I love, you might hate. And if you want to hate and we want to go back and forth and discuss
Exactly.
it, that's a completely different situation than you coming to me, which I know you would never do. But
Yeah,
you
absolutely
coming
not.
to me and
Hmm.
saying, oh, your opinion is wrong, mine is right, this
Yeah.
movie is blank, whatever your opinion is. It's like everything is open to interpretation. You will
Yeah.
experience something different than everybody else, and that's totally cool.
Yeah, and we talked about this on a previous episode of the show with Brian and a couple of my other guests too, talking about how that type of discourse, whether it be male or female, because there's a point where people just kind of crap on each other's ideas
Yeah.
and their and their reviews just because they don't agree, and it's like, this is the reason why we love this. And this is the reason why, I mean, I feel like you guys do First Cut, why you do, your writing, and why I do this show is so we could talk about film in a way that just like we're talking about it, and that's
Yeah.
the discussions that come from it is sometimes more fun than a lot of the mediocre or subpar movies that we watch anyway. So to have those conversations is really the joy of this.
That's the thing. How boring would it be if we all had the same opinion? I don't
I,
want to live in a world where
yeah,
all of us think the same way about every single thing. I want to hear why somebody else cares about something that I don't. And that's cool to me that they care about it.
exactly.
End of story.
Exactly. And yeah, and that's when the shrinking of scope of film, your love for film, it just stops there if you're not willing to go beyond art house movies or go beyond Marvel movies or whatever the fandom or
Yeah.
type of film that you enjoy primarily may be. You gotta open your horizons, and we're going to get into recommending some movies for people at the end of this. And I would love to chat with you about some movies that we do definitively love. But before that, I want to ask you about your time in the Schmodown. Now, I'm not super versed in it as of recent years. I am fairly familiar with the concept. But first, I want to ask, what were challenges coming into the league? And what do you hope to get out of the league this year and this next season?
Challenges going in. Well, one, everybody, I totally get that, I'm comfortable with my knowledge of film and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So everybody was like hyping me up when I first came in, and it definitely added like a layer of pressure. All
Yeah.
the managers were like fighting over me, and I was like, guys, I just want to go on record and say I never said I would be the best yet. Okay?
Y'all
There's so
just
much
like
more to
me. Come
learn.
on, relax. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, there's so much more to learn. I would just like to say
Mm,
I did not hype myself up. Other people did. But yeah, one of my things is just confidence in myself. In
mhm.
something like this. I had never played trivia in this capacity. I had never done anything like this when it comes to film. Having like 15 seconds to rack your brain to come up with an answer,
Yeah.
it's completely out of my comfort zone. And that's why I love it as well. So it's just building up that confidence to understand it. And then obviously when we talk about the experiences that I had last year, which goes back to also everybody in the Schmodown wants to be there. Everybody enjoys it. Everybody works together. We all
Mm,
enjoy each other's company. But when fans or other people are so passionate about something, and I feel like that's where the sports aspect comes into it.
yeah,
They're
for
so
sure.
passionate that they like, we see with sports fans like rioting because their team lost or won or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They get passionate, but it's just continuing to be like respectful, because obviously I did not, there was like, most people were very, very respectful, but then
Of
there's just like
course.
a handful that just go straight to insulting me in ways that don't even make sense. Like, I totally get if you're like, oh, this person has no film knowledge, whatever. But like the insults were so weird, and like I
Yeah.
don't like want it because I don't want to like ruin the experience. So I don't want to say anything like now, but it's more like degrading and calling people like stuff in that kind of sense. So
Yeah.
what I want to get out of it this year, because of the faction that I'm on, I've already hung out with them a bunch. I've already spoken to them a bunch, and it's been less than a week since I've even been on it.
Mhm.
Um, it's just genuinely celebrating film, celebrating my love for film, being in a happy mood all the time, not being so stressed out, focusing on like, I have to win. It's like, I know what I know and I don't know what I don't. So
Yeah.
whatever happens, happens. I want to win, but I'm not going to
Yeah.
lose my sanity over
Mhm.
it.
Of course. I mean, everyone, I'm assuming, is out in this competition to win, and I wish you luck in that pursuit of
Thank you.
victory. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine having, and this is exactly why people, and some of my friends have asked me, oh, I've seen, the Schmodown thing. Why don't you want to try it out? It's because I do not do well under pressure. So I cannot imagine that answering those questions in only the nick of time that you are able to is
Yeah.
probably very, very difficult. I wanted to ask you about that space. And I've seen a lot of, in terms of being on film Twitter and following many people that are involved with that space, that are fans of that space. I have recently seen a lot of criticisms of the handling of certain competitors entering the space that have clearly said and have done things that are absolutely misogynistic and at times very racist. I kind of just want to know your thoughts on that, as to however far you feel comfortable elaborating on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it goes back to what we talked about with accepting more people into this, because the people who are
Mm-hmm.
behind all of this are open to all of that, are accepting of, yeah, like, yeah, this woman's gonna kill it. Let's put her in, whatever.
Absolutely.
And then obviously that kind of is ruined when certain fans are going to be introduced to this, certain people are going to come in. It does kind of make somebody nervous. It's like we
Yeah.
want to empower all these different voices, but then we put people in who have done the exact opposite of that in a negative way. And that's something where obviously I can't speak on the character of the people in general,
Of
but
course.
my biggest thing is that I don't ever want to like work with somebody or do something with somebody who is racist, who is misogynistic,
Yeah.
who is anything of that sort, homophobic at all. That person is never going to get a moment of my time. And that's kind of something that I hope it's in that conversation of like cancel culture. And I don't think anybody can have an opinion on being pro or being against cancel culture. I think it's just if somebody's a bad person, I would like to see them not be involved in anything I'm working with.
Agreed.
And
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like this isn't about, I don't care about canceling this person. This person can do whatever they want with people who are open to having them with them.
Yeah.
I am just not. And I hope people that care about others also aren't.
And I think that is the perfect way to wrap that up, and well said. Yeah, I mean, and on this show too, I want to say there's no place for it. I don't want to ever see no racist, misogynistic, homophobic, anything of that nature here, because that's not what this is about, really. I mean, if you like film, then you have to realize that film comes from everywhere, from all different kinds of people. A movie that you probably love is made by someone that you might not agree with in real life, sadly. And and just be kind. It isn't hard, guys, to be kind. And I just want to kind of send a PSA out there for everyone that is
Yeah.
inside and outside film Twitter and this film space to just continue to be kind. I want to hear everybody's voices. It's the most beautiful part of this job, and doing this is just hearing different people's thoughts and opinions. So let's not silence that ever, and let's just continue to have healthy conversation. Yeah. So I wanted to wrap up this episode with you, Sabrina Ramirez, talking about some of your favorite indies, because you have a very, like I said, well-rounded film taste. But in terms of indies, there are very few people that I know that have as good of a grasp on it as you do. So I will just fire some back and forth to close out this episode. And first of all, I want to say before we wrap up here, it has been a phenomenal time. So thank you for coming on, dude. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much. I knew this was going to be a blast. I adore you.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. The first movie I want to touch on, Spectacular Now, is I got the poster right here. It's an A24 romance film, and we have briefly talked about this way back when you did your stream, actually talking about A24 movies. And I remember you not being as hot on this movie as I am, but this just strikes such a chord in me. It's strange because Sutter Keeley is kind of a toxic dude for a lot of this movie. And I think that as a male who has been toxic many times in his life, sadly, and hopefully atoning for that now, it's very eye-opening to see that kind of behavior and how it translates into other people's lives, and how other people that you may care about and may love are a victim of that. And kind of ending that cycle of being a douchebag is a beautiful sight to witness in that film. It always gets me in my feels. Shailene Woodley is so charming and lovable in that movie, and you just want to protect her and make sure nothing happens to her throughout its runtime. I kind of want to know your thoughts on it, though. What are your thoughts on The Spectacular Now?
Yeah, your opinion is wrong. Mine is right.
And here comes the war. No.
Exactly. No, I totally remember talking about this, and I think it's so funny because like I'm happy to hear like how much you love it. Personally, I couldn't attach myself to either of these characters, and I don't need I don't need all characters to be like completely like lovable and amazing people. I
Agreed. Yeah.
just yeah, I didn't empathize with either of them too much throughout the film. I just
Mhm.
didn't think either of them had too many like redeeming qualities. I think her name is Amy.
Yeah, Amy Finicky or something
Amy,
like that. Yeah.
yeah, Amy Finicky. I thought Amy was just like way too nice, like basically like a little lost puppy dog. And then I
Dude,
thought Sutter
yeah.
was a trash human. And
Horrible.
I don't think he redeemed himself, but like, I mean, it's a movie and it's super
Mhm.
cute and it's well directed and genuinely like, I think it is a good time and I would totally recommend it for anybody as well. So,
Yeah.
like, I second that. It's just personally not one of the ones I kind of cling to, especially when we're
Yeah.
talking
And
about
that's
like
something I
indie
kind of want to
filmmaking.
touch on too, where when talking about film, there are films that we could completely understand that we just don't like.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to just touch on that I hate about film discussion is that whenever there's something that someone doesn't like, it's automatically the response is that you don't get it. I mean, come on now, you
You're
know?
not knowledge if you don't sorry, if you don't love Tarantino and praise him all the time,
What are you
you
gonna
just don't
do?
have
You
taste.
have no taste, you have no knowledge and no intellect,
Yeah,
and it's just your opinion's not worth it at that point. So
not at
yeah,
all.
it's strange. Anyway, I don't mean to cut you off. Please, let's hear one of your favorite indies.
Oh, I kind of shouted it out earlier, but I'm gonna say like Frances Ha from Noah Baumbach, starring
Yeah,
Greta Gerwig. Of course, we got like one of the power couples of Hollywood right now, basically, of
seriously.
independent filmmaking, of just like all this kind of stuff. I love to see these two work together, and I had no idea they were in a relationship like at this time or whatever happened in their
Mm,
personal lives. But you could just see there's so much love and care put into this movie. I love the fact that it's in black and white. I'm kind of a sucker for that. It just it is such a great like adult coming of age movie, and I loved
agreed.
a lot of
Yeah.
the dialogue in this one, and I feel like again it's like a warm little blanket of like, yes, life is going to be tough, you're going to go through all these different experiences, there's going to be times where you struggle to pay rent, and that's all okay, and it's going to happen and things will get better, but like don't stop being the person that you are and don't lose your vibrancy.
Yeah, that's a movie that I haven't seen in years, but I mean Greta Gerwig is phenomenal and I remember distinctly how much life she brings to that movie and the choice of doing it in black and white feels so intentional and so smart. So I definitely recommend everyone going to check that one out. It's a very very good film. My next one is going to be Place Beyond the Pines. Have you seen this one, Sabrina? A Derek
I
Cianfrance film?
have.
Okay, cool. I adore this movie. This might be one of like my first indie movies. Actually, I watched it way back when at ArcLight in Pasadena years ago, and boy,
Okay.
I mean the I know people have complaints about the last act, and I won't spoil it for people that haven't seen it because we want to recommend these movies to go watch. But I would say stick with this movie. I feel like every payoff that this movie sets up is completely delivered by the end of it. Some of the best acting from Bradley Cooper. I'm not as big of a Bradley Cooper fan as most, and this is definitely one of my favorite roles that he's done. And if you love Ryan Gosling and Eva Mendes being a beautiful couple on screen, I definitely check it out as well. It's a heartbreaking movie. I mean, all of Derek Cianfrance's movies are, if you've seen them, they're very tough to watch emotionally. But man, it's intense. It's got a lot of great character moments that I've tried to put into my own writing that have inspired me. And it's always good to see Dane DeHaan too, because I miss that guy, seeing him on screen all the time, you know?
Seriously, I feel like I can't remember if it was this one or if it was Chronicle, Josh Trank's Chronicle. That was the first time that I saw him, but
Yeah.
he is absolutely incredible, like extremely underrated. I actually really like this film. I know this one's kind of like divided amongst people, like from
Yeah.
conversations that I've had, but I really do like it, and I love kind of the directions that we go. And Ryan Gosling just and Bradley Cooper as well, but both of them are absolutely incredible in that film. So
Yeah.
that's a good like underrated one.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one I feel like not many people talk about anymore. That just needs more.
No.
It's one of my favorite movies in general. I just think it needs more love always. So always willing to talk about Place Beyond the Pines with people.
Yeah, that's awesome, especially hearing that you like put it into your writing and stuff like
Oh,
that. That's
dude.
super
I
cool.
mean, just not to go super deep into it, but I mean, just the structure of the film is so simple, but done so brilliantly. And I've seen, I mean, many movies have done that exact 3 act
Mhm.
structure in that manner before, but I mean, just the way they're able to kind of portray the sins of the father, tying back into everything through decades of time is just beautiful. I love that movie.
Absolutely crazy. But also another pretty recent one. I feel like this definitely, I think this maybe like 2014, A24, A Ghost Story, directed by David Lowery.
I just watched this yesterday again, so
What?
let's
Oh my
talk
God,
about it.
you seriously prepped for this. You
I
knew.
did.
I absolutely love this film so much. And as
Mhm.
somebody who this entire time has been talking about writing and dialogue and stuff like that, I did not know what this was going into it. This is exact opposite of what I thought. I didn't watch any trailers. I didn't watch
Wow.
anything.
Okay.
There is little to no dialogue, like straight
Yeah.
up no dialogue in this film. I just think I actually wrote a poem and I have a tattoo on my arm of just like this little ghost. And I wrote a poem when I was younger, and this film kind of just like tied into that. So it hit this
Wow.
personal note for me.
Hmm.
And I feel like this is this interesting, like cerebral type of look into just like life in general and generations and things like that. I don't even
Yeah.
know how to describe it. It's a whole experience. It's genuinely an experience. Visually stunning. There's just so much to love in this film. Like David Lowery creating this, like that man is a talent. I haven't even seen too
Genius.
much of him, but
Yeah.
wow.
I mean, and not to mention the movie's only like an hour and a half, which I completely
Yeah.
forgot about. It's just barely under like, or it's at 90 basically, and it's gets so deep and emotional in that space of time with almost, you're right, like almost no dialogue. And I could totally see someone turning the movie on and being like, wow, this is probably one of the stupidest things I've seen. It's
Yeah.
just a dude under a sheet for an hour and a half. But I think that if you could get over that idea, because I know that people that are not super versed with indie films probably see this as one of the stranger ones. It's not.
Yeah.
This is just scratching the surface, really. But I would really encourage you guys to watch it. I mean, if you want a good cry, you want to get a piece of pie or a big piece of pie and just sit with it and watch this one, I would definitely encourage it.
A whole
This,
pan of pie.
yeah, or go for like a 4 minute, just don't stop, just eat that pie, the complete thing, your selection of flavor. Also, I do want to touch on though the scene in that movie that really got me this time more than any other time I've watched it is actually the final, like the final shot. I've always been kind of walked away from it very emotional, and that has always kind of left me feeling like, man, don't I wish that there was just a little bit. But yesterday after watching it, just like, now this is exactly as all things should be. It's perfect.
I genuinely have just like chills from thinking about all these
Dude.
different moments. Like,
Yeah.
just even when it's like him in his house and then he sees the other
Oh
ghost
my
in the other
goodness.
house, and it's like, who are you waiting for? Like, I don't remember.
And,
Or
and and some of those lines just make me cry. Like, I think they may have forgotten about me. It's just like, oh no. Yeah, wow. We could go into
oh
a
my
whole
gosh.
podcast about A Ghost Story.
So
Seriously, it's an amazing
good.
movie. My next one is actually another Rooney Mara movie. Because we love her. She's awesome.
We do.
And this is also another one with Ryan Gosling that many people hate. So brace. This is Song to Song with Ryan Gosling, Michael Fassbender, Rooney Mara, and Natalie Portman. It's a Terrence Malick film, and it's one of my first Terrence Malick films. And I went into this feeling like, oh, I'm probably gonna hate this as well. I was doing a rewatch of all of Michael Fassbender's films, and I watched A Hidden Life and Tree, or is it A Hidden Life? Yeah, A Hidden Life and The Tree of
Mhm.
Life before I saw this movie, and I didn't like either of those movies. And going into this, I was dreading the worst, and dude, it just spoke to me on every single level and notch it could have. I fell in love with it. It's the best kind of visual storytelling I think I've seen in a really long time personally. All the acting across the board just feels natural. Michael Fassbender is probably my biggest man crush of all time, and this movie allowed me to hate him for a little bit, which is a hard feat to accomplish, and it really got me to be like, wow, this is someone I don't ever want to be around. And all their chemistry between the four leads is just amazing. I want people to really give this one another chance, and I can't really even explain what is so perfect about it because it's another movie where there's very little dialogue. A lot of the dialogue is just narration from our four actors, and when it's not that, it just music and shots basically for 2 hours, and it spoke to me on a crazy deep level, and I can't wait to rewatch it again. Maybe I'm dead wrong about this one, but I feel safe to recommend it now. Thoughts on Terrence Malick or Song to Song, Sabrina?
So I have never seen this
Mm,
um because everybody kind of talked about it. I've
Yeah.
never actually watched it fully all the way through.
Mm.
From what I've seen, I've enjoyed. But I remember my friend, my roommate at the time, was actually watching it, and I kind of just like walked in, hung out for a bit, but didn't give it my time of day as
Yeah.
much. Like I was probably just like multitasking. So I'm gonna have to check that out. Can I just say, I love the fact that all three of yours so far, one of them is one that I don't like. A second one is one that
Yeah.
is divisive. A third one is another one that's divisive. This is exactly what I
Yo,
love to see.
dude, people think I have the hottest and strangest takes. I'm here to deliver them and continue to do so. So I will. I'm sure that I know one of these choices you love, but I'm sure this other choice will also be one of those ones where it's kind of like, okay, Michael, you might have a screw loose, but it's all right.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna say my next pick is probably, this is like really, really tough.
Mhm.
Little Miss Sunshine is another
Oh,
film
I
that
love
just
this
like
movie. Yeah.
hits me so freaking hard. And like there's so many independent films that I would love to talk about. Like this doesn't even scratch the surface
Not at
actually
all,
with my
guys. I agree.
recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much more, but just some of the ones that if I had to force a bunch of people to watch it, Little Miss Sunshine would be another one. The way they brush upon the subjects, like we talk about with like Steve Carell's character, that we talk about with Paul Dano's character. There's so many really deep things. I don't want to say anything before for anybody who hasn't seen it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of really interesting ideas that are kind of brought to life in this film, in a way that makes it so palatable. And it's not one of those where you're like, it's super deep and dark and depressing all the time. This is so happy and uplifting
Yeah.
at the same time that it's dealing with the darkness. And I think like having that correct balance makes this one a must watch.
That movie is so. I haven't seen it in years, but that movie is so fun
So
and
good.
so full of life. And
And it
it's
has
fun.
Sufjan Stevens.
Oh, does it really on the soundtrack?
Yeah, they play Chicago by
I like
Sufjan
that.
Stevens.
I like that. And if you guys don't know, Sabrina is the biggest Sufjan Stevens fan probably out
I
there.
am.
Sufjan, please notice her. She's in love with you. She loves
He's
this. I also want to say we want to talk about these movies, but we don't want to get too in depth with them. We know what we're talking about. We can assure you guys. We just need you guys to see them. And these movies just there's not much to be explained. Like you just kind of have to just experience it and feel it. And I feel like that's kind of the sentiment with almost all independent film rather than like these bigger blockbusters where I like to know almost nothing going in and just feel whatever I'm
Yeah.
watching. Yeah.
I'm the exact same way. I only watch trailers if I have to, if I'm
Mhm,
accidentally in a theater and they're playing stuff, but I
exactly.
just love to go into everything knowing the like least amount of possible.
Yeah. This is another one where I knew basically next to nothing. I didn't see it in theaters. I saw it at a friend's house one night of too many debaucherous acts. And this was the movie that ended up being put on when everyone was too tired. Super Dark Times. And it says something about this movie because this is after a very, very long night. And I stayed awake through this entire film because it is so good. And this is one we could talk a little bit more about because I know you have a lot to say about it. It is a thriller-esque kind of movie. I don't even know what genre to put it in. That's another thing with indie movies. What genre do these movies go in? A lot of the time, we can't really decide, but it's basically a coming-of-age high school movie involving a lot of death and craziness and trippy visuals and haunting dreams. It is just such a cool movie. Basically, if I was to compare it to something else to give it kind of a palatable idea for someone to digest, I would compare it most similarly to the vibe of Donnie Darko with a lot,
Yeah.
a lot more darkness, surprisingly, than that film, even I would say, where people just act out of pocket constantly. They make every wrong decision that you don't want to see, but it adds to this layer of dread and just tension. And I mean, next to Uncut Gems and Good Time, this is probably one of the most intense movies I've seen in the past couple of years. I kind of want to know what your thoughts on are, Sabrina.
Yeah, I was so surprised seeing this because I know this is something that we've talked about before.
Yeah.
I just stumbled upon it on Netflix and I was like, all right, I don't know what this is. I'm just gonna check it out. It really did blow my mind by like building up this tension that was just like not alleviated at all this entire time. And like, I'm not even familiar with the filmmakers behind it. I'm not even
Mhm.
familiar with like the actors. This is like, it's like you're looking into this like freaking nightmare of a film.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I know that sounds not fun, but no, it is.
It's
It's
so fun.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's fun and it's interesting, and you're gonna have like, I'm not gonna say that you're gonna like have the best time of your life or anything, but I do
Mhm.
think this is something that is so interesting to consume, especially when we're talking about like a ton of films that are like more up the uplifting side. Like you could tell just from the title, like this is a very, very dark film in
Yep.
general. And it's a dark look into everything that we're seeing. And yeah, this is a really great one. This is a
Yeah.
great
And
recommendation.
it's funny, I think touching back on like toxic masculinity, I think this is the movie that kind of displays one
Mhm.
end of discovering that you're being a toxic male and the other going full force into that idea and just letting it spiral into a uncontrollable madness. This is the movie to watch.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean that's it's impossible to deny. Like this one is so underrated. And
Yeah.
that's like the number one pain of like loving independent cinema is that a lot of it is just entirely underrated. Not enough people have seen it.
Yeah.
Obviously, a few of the ones I listed out are some of the more popular ones. But there's a lot like Super Dark Times that a lot of people just aren't going to be able to see. And so anytime that we could kind of boost that up in that way, I'm
Please.
here
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah. Do you got one more maybe that you'd want to shout out to people that haven't seen a lot of independent film?
Yeah, so one from like the 90s.
Oh, okay, cool.
We know him, we love him, Kevin Smith. I feel
Mm,
like Kevin Smith, still to this day, whether you like his filmography or not, I find him to be such an interesting filmmaker. And obviously, he got his start and he still works like in independent filmmaking.
yep.
And so, having somebody who has reached a level in his career like Kevin Smith, um, it's just interesting to see that he still goes back to his roots with independent cinema, and that kind of like all started out with Clerks. I think Clerks
Yep.
is one of those really cool movies. It's a comedy. It's a freaking I know he talks about like Linklater's Slacker being the inspiration for this film, and it follows just such an interesting, hilarious, unique, quirky
Yeah.
story that I still think that like I really hope audiences are still checking out films like that. Like I
Me
hope if
too.
someone's
Yeah.
diving into independent cinema, this is one of the first ones because like I said, like in the Tumblr times, this was one of the first ones that I had the opportunity to watch. Like when we're
Mhm.
talking about like independent cinema, that is still celebrated. And I love everything about Kevin Smith's filmography, even if it's weird, even if there's like sausage Nazis that he has in whatever. I just
Yeah.
like that he just goes
Mhm.
for it. And this one is obviously way smaller scale. So if you want to check that out, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Also, there's an alternate ending that I don't know. I'm not going to
Mm,
say it, but you
yeah.
know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
absolutely. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That alternate ending is funny because I remember before I talk about that film, I remember seeing that alternate ending before any knowledge of that film came to be, and I went, "Wow, this is a must be a very, very depressing, serious movie." And then going to watch the movie after, it's like, "Wow, this was the original ending for this film." It's crazy.
Crazy.
It's crazy to see like how those ideas came to be and transpired, but that movie is really not just really good, but it's crazy to see how much that movie has actually impacted, like I would say, like a whole generation of comedy in a way. Like
Yeah.
that early 2000s phase is full of movies of that vein that are done not as well, uh,
Mhm.
offensively horrible a lot of the time. I mean, I've just recently gone back and started watching a lot of the movies from like the early 2000s, and the stuff that is in those films that
Oh
used
my
to be deemed
gosh.
funny is insane. Clerks isn't about any of that and doesn't have any of that, and it still manages to be hilarious. So I would really encourage everyone to go check that out. And I actually like the sequel too. I know a lot of people are kind of mixed about the sequel, but I really
I haven't
dug.
seen it in a hot minute, but
Mhm.
like I'm here for Kevin Smith's filmography. He's a filmmaker that is so unapologetic and he
Yeah.
just goes for it with these like smaller scale ideas. And I'm like, yeah, as an artist, I'm like, make the films you want to make.
Oh
I
yeah.
will be here to watch it and I might hate it, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, and that's the perfect transition into the last film I'm going to talk about. It's from a filmmaker that this is only his second movie, and he wrote this movie, directed it, edited it, and he's done that for his next movie coming out, and he did that for the first movie that he did, and it's Jim Cummings' Thunder Road, or not Thunder Road, excuse me. Thunder Road is his first film. The Wolf of Snow Hollow is the movie I do want to talk about. It is so fun and quirky, and I know a lot of people feel this is like another one where it's kind of polarizing, where people either love this movie or they hated it, and it just struck a chord with me. And it's funny because I watched Fargo a couple days prior to watching this, and everyone said that this is a Fargo ripoff, and I walked away from it liking it more than Fargo, which is so strange. And I know that people will probably hate me for saying that, but I loved this movie. It's full of fun characters, often incompetent but fun. And it has its really some scary moments in it for a movie that is about a legend of a werewolf that may or may not exist. And even the way the suspenseful scenes are tackled, there's still such a charm and a quirkiness to the movie that by the end I walked away from it thinking it was nearly perfect, and I can't wait to watch it again to probably solidify that feeling. But it's one that I want everyone to go see. It's a very different take on the werewolf tale. Just understand that it is kind of subversive comedy, so you have to take it as a comedy first and then as a horror movie second. But I think a lot of people would really enjoy that one.
Yeah, I haven't checked that one out yet. So, I mean, with your recommendation, like I should totally do that.
Dude,
And
please do. Please do.
yeah, 100%. And one more that I just like would love to shout out because
Please.
it's kind of the opposite of I just talked about like Kevin Smith still
Mm-hmm.
making films that are kind of like in a similar vein of what he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I find really interesting about this filmmaker, because this filmmaker is still so young, you would not even believe, like when you think about it, you don't even believe how much he's accomplished at his age. But Ryan Coogler, his like basically
Yeah.
like his start, Fruitvale Station with
Oh,
Michael B.
amazing.
Jordan.
Amazing movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just there, it is so impactful, it is so important. It's one of those things where they're working on a low budget and you can create basically a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so simple, but it's so profound at the same time. And like it's just entirely like gut wrenching. And obviously it's following a real story. And it I cannot recommend it enough. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, from Ryan Coogler now, obviously, like we have like Creed, we have Black Panther, we have all these huge, amazing films that he's
Yeah.
behind. It all like you see his core as a filmmaker in this one, because no matter what it is, people can easily do a Marvel movie, and I love Marvel movies, but you
Mm-hmm.
could do
As
one
do I.
and you
Yeah.
could kind of like phone it in. You don't have to have like
Absolutely.
as much heart, and that's noticeable. But with Black Panther, he just injected so much heart and
Mm-hmm.
love and creativity into this story, and that's why it resonated with people, along with obviously Chadwick Boseman's performance and all the incredible performances that we had in that film. But with something like this, it's so small scale that you have to have something like that. You have to have a
Yeah.
talented filmmaker who's going to inject it with everything that it needs to become this like small scale masterpiece. And that's exactly what he does with Fruitvale Station.
Yeah, wow. Fruitvale Station is such a good movie. And honestly, it's one of those movies that you kind of forget who directed it because it's
Yeah.
so rooted in that indie sentimentality that it doesn't feel like someone that's directed a Black Panther or directed a Creed made that movie, but that's where he
Crazy.
came from. And it's a very, very hard watch, but it's definitely one that I would recommend to everybody. And also, if those who knock Michael B. Jordan's acting, this is the movie that really, I mean,
Yeah.
he's phenomenal. This is like an Oscar-worthy performance that needs a lot more respect and love because it's so good. And he played a real person too, which is an even greater and bigger task in itself. And I commend him for it. But wow,
Yeah.
that's those are our indie picks that we definitely recommend. So guys, please check out those movies. And if you have watched at least one of them, please leave a comment letting us know what you thought of it. Please let it be Super Dark Times if you get to pick just one because we
Or
both or hey.
Short Term 12.
Oh, we didn't
That's
talk
another
about that.
good
Yeah, we
one.
didn't talk about
No,
that
that's
movie.
okay. uh Short Term 12, guys. I know I had just there's way too many
It's
that
too
it's just
many
gonna keep
guys.
going and
Yeah.
going and going and going.
Yeah.
But we both of these lists are just like really great. But I think you have to top it off with Short Term 12. Short Term
Amazing
12
movie.
is absolutely incredible. Destin Daniel Cretton, I believe is I always mix up the Daniel and the Destin
Yeah, it's
part,
tough.
but directed and wrote this beautiful film from something that
Mm-hmm.
he kind of experienced in his own life working in situations like this. Made a short film and then had this film, and we see people like Brie Larson, John Gallagher Jr., Rami Malek, Caitlin Dever, Lakeith Stanfield, like the
Yeah, the
list goes
whole
on.
cast is insane.
Yeah, it's incredible, and I think it came out in like 2013 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it follows like a story of a kind of this home for like orphans or children who are like in between certain places,
Mm-hmm.
and the community that's built in something like this when these kids are experiencing so much like loss in their life. They're experiencing things that adults wouldn't be able to handle, and these are children, so seeing it through their eyes just adds
Yeah.
that extra layer to it. And then and then obviously the people that care for them, the people that are working there, and like that level of like, yes, we're working for these kids and we have to care for them, but also we're we're hired to do this and we have to keep this certain like level to our relationship. But to see the community that they build in short term 12 is
No,
just
yeah.
like absolutely astounding.
So that movie is amazing. Like that's a movie that I could say outright is perfect on every
It
level,
is.
acting, writing, direction. It's just perfect. And I wish that they never released. I don't know if you've seen it, but they re-released like a DVD cover of this movie that is absolutely atrocious. So do not let that cover stop you guys. I think that that's the one that's like on like iTunes and stuff now. So do
It's
not
so bad.
let that cover stop you guys. It's not that kind of a generic romantic comedy that the cover makes it look like. It's a really touching film, and I would recommend. Yeah, it's an awesome movie. I'd recommend it to everybody. And also I would say Brie Larson's best performance in my opinion. I loved her in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, she does great all the time, but this is something else. This
Yeah.
is a different, when it is these like smaller scale films, like you really, it's carried by these performances
Mm-hmm.
so much. And Caitlin Dever, all of them, like I would genuinely say, out of all of their careers, Lakeith Stanfield,
Yeah.
he does
Wow.
incredible all the time. But the performance he has in this film when he was really young, when he was starting out, same thing with Caitlin Dever, is just something so special. It is so special to look back at this film and see these actors that are like that we talk about and we see in all these different things. Of course, Brie Larson's Captain Marvel,
Yep.
and this is just a story, another one where I feel like a lot of us haven't experienced something like this, and it's a beautiful look into something else, and you have an idea of different people's perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's so, it's like heartbreaking and warm at the same time. It's all these mix of
Yeah.
things. It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's the best way to describe it. Heartbreaking and warm, and it's really hard to capture for a film to capture that vibe and sustain it
Yeah.
through its entire runtime, and it does. Yeah, everybody, please forget the list. Just go watch Short Term 12 immediately because that just
That's it.
injected into your veins. It's so good. Sabrina, dude, thanks for coming on. It's been an absolute treat to have you. Anything you want to plug before as we wrap this up right now?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast. I love being able to just like talk about things that I don't typically get to. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, basically, you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Sabrina X Monica, and then also on Twitter at Sabrina on Film. You could check out First Cut on YouTube. That's basically like my main place. You could check me out on Patreon that we kind of talked about throughout this episode. Patreon.com/Sabrina on Film. If you like to hang out with people, you like to talk movies, you like to talk life, just have that kind of like open community, check that out over there. And then of course, if you check out the Geeks of Color website, you could check out some of my articles, check out RB3's, Andres's, everything like that. But yeah, this has been a blast.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on again, guys. I'm Michael. As you know, you're here listening and watching, and thank you for watching. I'm with the lovely Sabrina Ramirez. You must check out all of her content, must support First Cut. The guys over there are doing a phenomenal job. Thanks for watching. It's strange coming back and doing these episodes after such a long time, but we got a bunch more coming. I'm still working on those monthly recap videos of the films I watch, and Sabrina, I would love to have you on for another podcast episode in the future where we can dive more into independent film because
Let's do it.
that was a treat, and we have so many more to recommend to you guys. So stay following me. I'm on Twitter at Michael Chu for real. I believe my Facebook, which I don't use, is the same. Catch me on Instagram, Michael Chu _ and that letterboxed just Michael Chu. That's another episode of Chew on This in the Books, guys. Thank you for watching and have a great day. Later.